Hey, and welcome to this episode of the Marketing Guides for Small Business podcast. Today, Paul and I are excited to be joined by our guest, Mickie Kennedy. Mickie is the founder and the president of eReleases, which is a press release distribution service that's helped small businesses, authors, and startups to increase their visibility and credibility through press release marketing. He has over 25 years of experience in the PR industry. Here are a few things you should know about Mickie. He has distributed more than 100,000 press releases for more than 10,000 customers. That's huge. He has worked with more than 20 Shark Tank companies, including Manscaped and Squatty Potty. Just like to say that name. He has generated in excess of $87 million in earned media for his clients, and he is a two-time Amazon best-selling author in public relations and marketing. So to say the least, Mickie knows his stuff when it comes to leveraging public relations for small businesses. And today he'll be sharing how you as a small business owner should consider using press releases and how you can get regular local media coverage without spending a dime. So Mickie, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thanks for having me.
We're really excited to have you on this podcast and the information that you're going to share with the audience. So I'm going to start off with a question. Let's start off by asking, are press releases a viable and relevant marketing strategy today for small businesses?
Yes, absolutely. Press releases have a huge leverage opportunity when they're issued over a wire, and they can be a really great opportunity for a small business looking to stand out. It's not unusual for a couple of articles to appear and generate considerable buzz revenue for a client. And in addition to that, you can take the links to those articles and share them with your leads as well as your customers, and get them to feel all jazzed up and get that boost of credibility that an article has when a journalist chooses to write about you.
So it's almost good for retention as well, you're saying, because people feel, your existing clients or customers feel great about you as a business because you're getting such great press.
Right. I mean, people are always going to be shopping, are we working with the best company? And when they see an article come through that is about you, they're going to feel better about saying, let's hold off shopping this year. We're with the right company.
That's awesome.
Hey, Mickie. So we know press releases are good for helping visibility, but are there other strategic, marketing benefits for press releases?
Sure. So when you send out a release and it's out there, there's a little bit of a visibility that comes with it. All of the news wires give you what they call syndication. And so your press release is going to be like on Yahoo Finance and Market Watch and a few other websites. Predominantly they're financial websites because those are the ones that tend to stream press releases because they're free content. But the real benefit is when you get earned media. And that's what we call it when a journalist writes about you and turns your press release into an original article. And, having an original article from a major or even minor news agency is going to help you when it comes to SEO benefit and credibility. Plus, you get to borrow some of their audience, potentially people who could potentially be partners or customers, and just sort of put eyeballs on you and gain some attention. Also, it's a really great way to take when you do get media coverage and share it with your social media. I'd mentioned sharing it with your customers and leads, but there's also the opportunity of if you're an offline business or you do meet face to face with clients, to share clippings. I had a client in New Jersey that was a local carpet company, and he tried to think of a more non-newsworthy business. They were it, but we were able to get considerable media attention for them. And they put together what they called a brag book. So whatever they went out and gave someone a quote for a carpet install, they would say, we're not probably going to come in the cheapest, but we've been recognized nationwide. Here we are in Floor Covering Weekly. Here we are in this trade publication. Here we are in the local newspaper. Here we are in New Jersey Magazine. And all of a sudden, they start converting at 17% more of these quotes that they have with people face to face, just by introducing that brag book. So that credibility, that social proof that comes from having someone write about you when you're sitting at home and you're deciding what vendor to have install your carpet, you're like, hey, this one's $300 more, but I was really impressed that they're recognized nationwide. They've appeared in the local paper as well as New Jersey Magazine. I feel very comfortable working with them.
And one of the questions that comes to my mind, Mickie, is press releases are very common, or at least our perception of them is very common for large national or regional businesses. Are they relevant for local businesses? And if so, how do they leverage? How does a local, service-based business leverage press releases for them?
Right. So I think that if you're in a local market and you only service a local community or audience, it is a little questionable whether you should be spending money to go on a wire nationwide. E-Releases does offer local saturation so that we can target generally a major metro, or a lot of them are statewide. So it is a way to sort of reach your community of readers, but it is important. And I think that also getting some national attention on top of it can really go a long ways. In the case of the carpet company in New Jersey, almost 90% of their clippings were trade publications that their customers never read. And yet they were able to compile them in a book and present them to their customers, potential customers, and convert more of them by doing so. So it can be valuable getting that national attention as well as the local saturation.
That's cool. And you mentioned states. I'm based in Canada, and some of my clients are as well. Do you guys cover Canada and other countries, or what's your coverage for e-releases?
Right. So we do cover, I think, about 60 major countries, Canada, of course, being right up there at the top. So we service mostly clients who are wanting to reach other English-speaking countries, or countries where some businesses transacted in English.
Perfect.
So, Mickie, following up on that about the local media, is there a way for small businesses that service a local area? Is there a way for them to get media coverage without spending a lot of money?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're a small business and you're not quite ready to, dip your toes into issuing a release over a wire and spending a lot of money, you can sort of do what PR firms do. PR firms, if you've ever researched them, are generally not generalist. You usually have a PR firm that's for fashion, a PR firm for high tech, consumer electronics, one that's more for computer hardware. And so the reason for that is they establish relationships with journalists in that community, and it's easier to network within an industry or a specific community. You can take that approach and apply it to you locally. If you think about it, there's probably less than 10 people in your market who would either write or cover you in a news capacity. And, looking at your local paper, what writer or couple of writers cover your industry? Find out who they are, do your research, and then reach out and ask for their email address if you can't find it on the website. They will give it to you. They're members of the community. They're not celebrities trying to hide, and have gatekeepers. They are, members of the community. And all you have to do is ask and say, hi, I'd like to get this person's email address so I could send them a lead or a tip, or something that I'm working on. And they might put your call through directly to them, and just again reiterate that you have a pitch that you'd like to do and you'd like to email that along to them. Build your own little Rolodex. If you're lucky enough to have a newspaper or business magazine or both, again, do your due diligence, figure out who writes in your industry, and get their email address. Now, all of a sudden, when you have these 10 email addresses, and it can also include radio and TV as well. If there's segments that you've seen that sometimes spotlights businesses or interviews people, find out who the booker or producer of that segment is, It might just be the booker or producer of the entire program. And again, get their email address. And as you have ideas, send emails to these people. They don't have to be press releases. You can just put together 3 or 4 sentences. I always recommend putting together a strong quote in addition to that, because if a journalist sees an amazing quote, they can in their mind visualize building out an entire article around that amazing quote. And by amazing quote, I mean say something that can't be easily paraphrased without losing the magic of it. And it could be the way that it was crafted, the wordsmith approach, or it could be the power or persuasion of what you said, or just the strength of it. And spend a little bit of time with that quote and try to keep it to 1 to 2 sentences max, and have those additional sentences of pitching. And it can be just something along the lines of, I've seen a lot of media coverage in my industry about this issue. Could be, going green. And I would love to share with you what we're doing at, local Dry Cleaners Inc. And here are some things that we're doing that are really relevant, and maybe break that out very shortly, and then have that amazing quote. And, just send that to them as you have these ideas. I, would not recommend weekly, but I do think that every other month, or if you can sustain it even a little bit more often, like monthly, but at the minimum, I suggest doing it quarterly. And what you'll find is over time, you won't even have to reach out to them. They'll reach out to you. They'll be working on a story. They'll be looking for a local business that they can just plug into that article. And because you've been reaching out to them for the past year and a half, you're going to come top of mind, and they're going to reach out to you and say, hey, I'm doing this story on this subject. I thought of you. Could I get a few words that we could plug into this article and use you for it? And again, spend a little time and energy on that quote. Say something that's just really powerful or meaningful or concise. Just if you can really condense something very, very good, then that is another way to sort of stand out there. And this is something that PR firms do on a national level within an industry. And this is something that you can start just locally, and it doesn't have to be very daunting. At the minimum, you just reach out to these people quarterly.
And my next question was going to be how to approach the press, but I think you've answered that. Are there any other tips related to that?
When you're looking for their email address, you also might want to just look on Twitter, or X as they call it now. Some journalists like to be on there, and that might be a good way to contact them. But I think that email and the phone is a really great way to reach out to these people. I think that email is pretty standard, and most journalists are use that method. Some PR firms are known to follow up by phone to say, hey, just checking up on that pitch that you had. I wouldn't recommend that unless you're really strong on your feet. Now, what a good PR firm does is they're like, hey, I sent you that pitch about, using the example I had before, about how my client is going green in the dry cleaning business. And they're like, yeah, we're not really interested in that. We're really looking into, like people's maybe more using green energy. And then all of a sudden, thinking on your feet, you're like, how could I apply this to this client? Or as a PR firm, you might have another client. You're like, oh, so you take the opportunity and you tweak your pitch, and you present them something else. So if you're really good on your feet, you can follow up through phone calls, but you might annoy some journalists. Some journalists just prefer the more passive approach of receiving emails and deciding yes or no without having to have an interrogation with a person. You can sort of get a feel for that if you call and just make a note if it seemed like they weren't really receptive to it.
Yeah, and by what you're saying, Mickie, it sounds like it's just like with most marketing, you're really developing or nurturing a relationship, right? For prospective clients, you're doing the same thing, but in this case, your audience that you want to reach is essentially the first step in that is to reach the the press themselves or the journalist and start developing a relationship so that they see your value in the marketplace for their audience. Is that right?
Correct. And sometimes you may not even have something to pitch, like you just don't have anything going on with your business, but you've noticed a trend within your industry because most people follow trade publications and industry press uh, stronger than general news. And at your local news, it may take a few months before they start to talk about a subject. So maybe you could just tell them, hey, I've really seen a lot of people talking in my industry about X, Y, and Z. I just thought I would, share this with you and see if it's something that you may want to consider, even knowing that you wouldn't be a great fit for an article about it. But what you're doing is creating goodwill and working that relationship and being a value to them, so that next time you do have something to pitch, they might be more receptive. Like, oh yeah, they gave me that really good story before that I ended up doing. I owe them a little bit. So it really is a great way to sort of establish a relationship and try to be a friendly member of the community and see them as the member in the press that can potentially help you, but also have a cordial relationship.
Yeah.
Hey, Mick, so before I move on to my next question, I want to follow up on something you said about how often you should do press releases. I've heard people say you should do them a couple times a month or at least monthly, and you're saying no, not necessarily. You said something about quarterly. You did say maybe monthly, but what would you say about that?
Yeah, that was directly pitching to local media. And you're not going to have, we're talking about a small group of publications, and they certainly can't write about you 8 times a year. That would just look strange in a small market. So for them, I think that quarterly is a really great goal to have. You can do it certainly more frequently. When it comes to press releases, it really varies on you, how newsworthy you are, or how willing you are to engage in doing strategic types of releases. For some people, I think that monthly is a great goal. The local carpet company did a 1-year campaign that was monthly, and at the end of it, they had about 30 clips to show for it. And these were earned media. There was probably over 600 or 700 syndicated links, that just happen automatically that aren't really important. But the clips that they were able to print out and share were original articles, and it totaled about 30, which is really an amazing result for any client doing just press releases only without pitching. And if you can sort of sustain a monthly, that's way to go. Every other month, that's fine. And even quarterly, it just depends. I mean, some small businesses are just mom and pops and they don't have a lot going on, or maybe they do, but they're just, pulled in so many directions that they can't sustain doing something monthly or every other month. So I try to strive for quarterly at a bare minimum. But if you're a company that's growing, you have a lot of exciting stuff happening, new partnerships, you're getting into large, stores, and you might want to go with a much more frequent basis. I have some clients that do as many as 30 to 40 releases a year, but I'd say most of my small businesses are doing anywhere from 4 to 6 a year.
Okay, good information. So can press releases help with SEO and generating traffic for a small business, generating traffic to their website?
Yeah, definitely. So anytime you get an original article about you, that is a huge indicator on a major news site, because news sites generally have authority when they talk about SEO, and this search engine optimization authority that happens with certain sites that are just known to be really respected, and news sites are right up there with it. So anytime you get an article there, it's a benefit to you. And with Google, you don't even have to have a link in the article to your website to get the SEO benefit. Google gives you what is called like an implied link, as if there is a link. Google can contextually tell that this press release mentioned your company name and talked about you and your industry. So they contextually knew that this article was about you. And as a result, that article bestows upon you SEO benefit, even if they didn't bother to link to your website or a page on your website. So it can be really valuable. I had one client whose only goal from press releases was to generate SEO. Their domain name somehow was attached to their Yellow Page campaign, and it ended. I don't know, the Yellow Pages were sold and something happened and their website went dark and they had to start over with a new domain name. And they came to me and asked if there was something that they could do to get authority links. And I said, being in the automotive industry, I think that if we were to target auto industry trade publications, that would really help you. And I said, one of the things that we're going to want them to do is to link to you, because we're not just going to rely on an implied link. We're going to try to get a real link up there. So we built out a resource page that went along with a survey and study that we did. And we put together the survey. It was 16 questions, 4 pages, so 4 questions per page through SurveyMonkey. And on the last page, we had some fun and put some fun little questions in there. One was, what's the strangest thing a customer left in their car while being repaired? And it was just an open field where people just wrote a sentence or two. And that was the one that we ended up going with for the press release. We just focused on what was the strangest things left in the car while being repaired. And I think in the press release, we listed 20. On the resource page, we had all the questions and answers, but we also listed, I think, around 50 to 75 of the most interesting responses we got there. And it was a fun page with a lot of really cool resources and facts and numbers and stuff like that. And as a result, they got over a dozen auto industry trade publications that wrote articles and linked to them. They linked to that page. A funny thing is, some of the articles went onto the page and pulled out experiences that they thought were more quirky and fun than the 20 that we highlighted in the press release. And a couple people wrote articles about some of the other questions that we ask in the automotive industry. So it worked out really well. They got local newspaper pickup. They also got pickup in a few minor newspapers nationwide that just thought it was a really cool thing. And I think within 6 to 10 weeks, they were ranking #1 in search for, local auto repair or auto repair in the city that they were in Pennsylvania. And so it can help you, and it can help you pretty fast. And also these links can be very meaningful. The only downside is that, unfortunately, a lot of news sites over time might migrate their content management system, or CMS. And generally they do a big purge of all old articles and things like that. So sometimes these articles die. But the good news is, you want to make sure that when you do get these articles, you share them as much as you can with links on social media and with, as I mentioned, clients and leads. But you also want to capture them, take screenshots of them, put them up on your website with logos. Try to build out a newsroom if you can on your website, where you put the press release, you put screenshots of articles, and just get all of that out there. And at a very minimum, if that's just too much of an ask to redesign your website, if you have a blog, put them there, just as long as you have them on your website.
Yeah, that's a good point, real quick, about the implied links from Google, because Google is really moving in the direction of entities and the context in which those entities operate. So the implied link, like you said, if you can get a real link, that's even better. But even an implied link from Google can really be helpful.
Right. Yeah. We used to put all of our press releases on our website. And after a while, Google has a developer site where it has a tag cloud of what they think your website's about. And we realized that Google was thinking we were about the iPhone and all of these other press releases that we were doing. So we cleaned it up and got our press releases off of our website. And as a result, our SEO improved considerably. And the types of traffic we're getting is more relevant to people looking at press releases and press release distribution.
That's awesome. And Mickie, so thinking now through the process, a small business is convinced. You've convinced them now they want to do a press release. They want to use e-releases or a service like yours. What are the steps involved to effectively create, publish, and distribute a press release?
Right. So basically, you're going to want to decide what the press release should be about. And you want it to be as newsworthy as possible. There are many pages that will list hundreds of things you could have or be the subject of your press release. We have them on e-releases. And the thing is, many of them aren't strategic, and by strategic, I mean important, newsworthy. We get the most common press release at e-releases is a personnel change. And often it's not a new CEO or board member or someone important. It's not an industry veteran that, is a major coup for you. It's an associate VP of HR. And if you're going to spend money and go over wire, you want to, fish with better bait and have more strategic types of releases. Another common press release we get is the product launch press release, which in and of itself isn't bad, but it's usually, here's a product, here's a bullet list of features, and here's a buy button with a link to a page on their website. And that's it. And you got to remember, journalists are storytellers. And if you look at what the best articles that journalists write, they have story arcs. And it's hard to have a story arc when it's a product and a list of features. Things that you could do to help them would be build out the press release with a use case study. This client had this problem. They used the product. This was the results that they saw, and get a quote by them talking favorably about the product and incorporate that into the press release. So, that's it. When it comes to writing the press release, the writing is the easy part. It's the strategy beforehand. And I think that if you spend a little bit more thought and time and realize that journalists are gatekeepers, and what your goal is to get recognized, has to also coincide with their goal to fascinate and entertain and educate their audience. And so what could you do in your press release to make it more irresistible or of interest to their audience? And if you can do that, it becomes a win-win, where they get what they want, which is a great article, and you get what you want, where you get some recognition in the industry. When it comes to the actual writing of the press release, there's lots of resources. We have them on our website as well at ereleases.com. You can just click on press release samples or examples and look at them. And the writing is not complicated. It's a very, almost 8th grade level writing, usually without a lot of jargon, unless you're writing something specifically to technical trades and you only want to reach out to them. But most people are trying to go a little bit more general and broad. And so you want to make sure that you don't have a lot of jargon in it, and that you have an amazing quote in the press release, and that you're leading with the hook in the headline and the opening paragraph. And I think that even using AI to help you write, if writing is a deficiency with you, it's completely fine, because while the press release will be replicated on syndicated sites, it's not going to convey much benefit. What you're looking for is a journalist to take what you wrote, and then they write it in their own words, and then they post that as an article. So using AI is not a deficit. I wouldn't endorse using AI to create content that's going to live on your website, like your blog posts and stuff like that. But I know that some people do. And I just feel like at some point, is Google going to decide that they prefer human crafted and curated content over AI? But I think when you're presenting the content specifically for the media to turn into something else, using AI is completely fine.
Yeah, that's a good point, in that Google has already added to their algorithm AI detection. So it's great to use it as a starting point, but you really need to have a person vet it and maybe tweak things a little bit, because Google is looking for those things. Let me ask you this. It's when someone approaches a PR firm, whether it's e-release or someone else, what do they need to know about that process, how it works? Is there anything they should definitely do or things they should not do?
I think that when they approach a PR firm, that they should be open to PR and they should be open to a PR campaign. We get a lot of clients that are one and dones where they do one press release. It might be the product launch with a list of features. It could be the personnel change. And then they just say, well, that didn't work for us. And they just move on. And what they don't do is, strategic types of press releases. They're not doing the types of releases that work. And what you have to realize is the average PR campaign, you're not going to get every press release as a win. Often, you're looking for the one or two a year that generate a decent amount of article response. And so if you stop after one press release, you're sort of selling yourself short. It's like doing a Google ad campaign, and after 1,000 impressions decide, well, no one bought. 1,000 people looked at the ad. It's not going to work for me.
We see that all the time.
Yeah, you have to tweak it. You have to change it. You have to be willing to go strategic. And that's something that e-releases prides itself on, is education. I have a free masterclass that's a video training of an hour that goes through the strategic types of releases that you could be doing, the ones that are meaningful and likely to get picked up. And if you were to use that to build a PR campaign, I guarantee that you would get results in a campaign of 6 to 8 press releases. And that one is at ereleases.com/plan, PLAN. And it's less than an hour. It's a great place for someone who's new or thinking about PR to start, because it really takes your business and walks it through the types of releases that you could be doing that are meaningful. For example, I'd mentioned doing a survey or study. That's a great way to stand out. And it doesn't have to be daunting. A lot of people are like, well, I wouldn't know who to send the survey to. But if you're doing an industry survey, there are lots of trade associations within your industry, many of them small and independent, that are always looking for a win-win. So if you approach them and say, hey, could you send this link to your members for a survey I'm doing, and I'll mention you in the press release that we'll be issuing over the wire, they see that as like, wow, we could get some media attention as well. I've had some that are a little, I guess they're crafty and smart, where they go, could we co-brand the survey? I don't see a downside to that unless they don't have enough members for it to be a slam dunk. You're really looking for at least 100 responses from these people for the media to sort of take it seriously. And it's always great if you get a couple hundred responses, but anything like that generally works within an industry survey. And the types of questions that you ask are really important. You want to ask things that are very timely, not evergreen questions, but things that are like really specific to what's going on right now. So, if you think of things that you'd love to ask at a conference to other colleagues within your industry, those potentially could be interesting questions to ask. Like how, do you plan on spending more or less on your marketing over the next 2 quarters? Some could be hiring related. Are you considering layoffs, or are you having difficulty managing people who don't want to come back into the office? Or, are you just having challenges with creating company culture? All of these things could be really relevant questions, but you also want to sort of leave yourself some room at the end of that to maybe ask a few left field questions, like, wild questions that, may not lead anywhere, but oftentimes, in the example I talked about, the automotive repair shop, it worked really well for them. So be creative, put a little energy into that thought process, and be strategic and be open. And I think that if you approach PR like that, and you go working with a firm like e-releases or someone else, it can really work well for you. And e-releases is really considered more of a press release distribution platform than a PR firm. We do work with a lot of small PR firms, but as a platform, our costs are considerably low. And, with a new customer discount, you can, build out a campaign of 6 to 8 releases and spend, under $3,500 for distribution. If you work directly with a PR firm, you're likely to have a monthly budget that exceeds $3,500. So that's one of the downsides of working with a PR firm.
That's awesome. And Mickie, you talked about using surveys as potentially the kind of the conversation starter with some press releases. Are there specific types of press releases or different types of press releases that maybe there's a handful of them that you would recommend that a business consider?
Yeah, I think that one is sometimes your story, and it could be your unique selling proposition, what it is that you do that's different than everybody else. I see that startups do really well with PR, and we work with quite a few that appear on Shark Tank. About a third of the people on Shark Tank use us to do a press release about their episode before it airs. The producers recommend that. And I recognize that they do really well. It doesn't hurt you're on a national TV show, but I've seen it work with startups who aren't on Shark Tank, who just come in. And I think that they have a strong grounding of what they're about. They have an elevator pitch down pat. They know and have defined what they do that's different than everybody else. And, what is your story? Is it inspirational? A vulnerability? There's often a human interest element in these stories. Everybody that goes on Shark Tank shares their story. I was sick, I was home, I was out of work, I had this need, I created this. Often it's a very humanizing element, and that works really well. So is there something there? Your journey, your elements of who you are and how your business came to be. That's not going to work for everyone, but sometimes there is a quirky beginning. You could also go the eBay route. Everybody in the early 2000s knew the story that eBay was created by a guy to help sell his girlfriend's Pez collection, which was completely manufactured by a PR firm. That was not true.
Wow.
But it got a lot of articles because it was a way to immediately identify, oh yeah, you have this odd collection. How do you get rid of it? So, you create this product, and then you see other people can use it to sell their products. And so it sort of highlights that, and it sort of shows the value of having a story because it makes it more accessible to everyone. So is there something with the genesis of your business or a particular product or something that you've gone through that can be you being vulnerable, or a pivot that you've done? We did a lot of press releases during the pandemic about pivots. Everybody was changing what they were doing, and they needed to communicate that. So anything along those lines can really go a long way. Other types of releases that are meaningful is, I mentioned surveys and studies, but data. Journalists love data, and it doesn't have to be a survey or study. You can take public data that's out there and arrange it in a way that's interesting in a press release. You can talk about your product. You can talk about, certain percentage of people in your industry face this problem. Your product solves it. And here's some percentages on, people that have used your product, that the results that they achieve. So just incorporating data that you have, mixing it with public data is a way to make your copy more interesting and to make it more of a story arc, because, identifying a problem within the industry is great, but having numbers behind it makes it more meaningful, and you can dig in. Researching your industry for blind spots or gaps is another great way to get media attention. That's what the carpet company did. Their press releases were at the first 5 months, nothing happened. They got nothing. And we did a brainstorm and found out that their biggest enemy was the big box home improvement stores. And so I said, let's go with that. And let's do a David versus Goliath approach, and how you have to market against, Home Depot and Lowe's, and how they're really they provide a terrible service to customers, and how you have to market against them. And that was what really got them a lot of results. Over 10 places picked up that first release that we did. And like I said, at the end, they had over 30 clippings from the remaining 7 months that we had working with them. Quotes I'd mentioned are really important. Journalists can really build a story around an amazing quote. Another thing to keep in mind is there's been this concept called newsjacking. I think I heard it a little over 10 years ago, and it's like when there's a trend in your industry, join it. And that worked 10 years ago. It doesn't work now because there's too many people competing. And if everybody's joining the conversation saying the same thing, you're competing for, maybe 20 articles, and there's 10,000 of you or 5,000 of you. But if you're willing to be the friendly jerk or contrarian, that's where you can get picked up in all 20 or 30 of those articles. Most journalists want to be fair and balanced and show both sides of an issue. But most of the times when articles go to press, they only show one side because no one was there raising their hand saying, not so fast. This is the negative side of this issue. For example, electric cars. Everyone seems to think they're great. We're moving to them. But you could be the person who says, maybe we shouldn't move so fast. The electric grid isn't really set up to handle everybody with electric cars at this point. The batteries take their own environmental toll, mining them, not to mention the labor issues of often children going down and working in mines. Also, what do we do with these batteries at the end of their life? Are we creating an even bigger landfill issue? And also, have you seen fires where electric cars get into an accident? They cannot be put out with your average fire truck putting water on it. It often takes as many as 25,000 gallons of water to put out a single electric car fire. And that is not what I would call environmental. Now, that contrarian side that I just took is level-headed and rational. It's very unlikely that I'm going to alienate my customers. So when you do that, you want to make sure that you're not taking a position that would, make people angry or, ruffle any feathers among people who are your customers. But it is a great way to stand out within your industry and be the go-to person when they're talking about an issue to put that other balanced side in there. Other types of things to keep in mind is when you're doing a press release, have great photos. And they don't have to be like corporate photos or really great ones. Candid photos work way better over what I would consider like the stock photo approach, the professional approach. People like to see other humans, and often the candid shots show things in a way that's much more compelling than a stock photo. And if you add that to your press release, and a journalist is looking at two press releases, they could turn into an article, and one's got some great pictures. They know that they can take those photos and incorporate them on their website, and that's going to give a much better experience for their audience. And so they're more likely to choose you because of that. And other little hacks are, each year you could do yearly predictions in your industry. You could do, trends. Other things that work really well is sometimes putting together copy that's pretty much already finished for them to go with. Top 10 works really well, like the top 10 tools in your industry, of which yours is one of them. I've seen this work really well with podcasts, where someone will say the top 10 historical podcasts you should be listening to, and they put their podcast as like number 7, and then they surround it with a lot of other great podcasts. And a busy journalist who is under deadline and just looking to fill some space sees that and is like, I can just copy and paste 1 through 10, put a good headline on it, and I've got some content. So don't we call those features where they're ready made. So don't discount those as well. And those work really well with local media, especially. You won't see the New York Times or the USA Today doing that. With one exception. I had one client who was in the bed and breakfast space, and they would do a lot of top 10 spookiest bed and breakfasts in New England and things like that. And USA Today, their travel section would copy and paste and use that almost verbatim. But most national large publications don't just copy and paste.
So you kind of talked about this. I was going to ask you about surveys and studies in PRs. Is there anything that you can add to that or expand on it? I know you've kind of answered that already.
Right. I think that it's a huge opportunity. I had that local auto shop in Pennsylvania that wanted to get more SEO, and I told them you should do a survey, and the auto industry publications will likely cover it. They had such an imposter syndrome. Who are we to do a survey? We don't matter. We're small. We're nobody. And what you have to realize sometimes with working with small businesses is you got to talk them up and get them to realize that the only thing that makes you an expert is getting out there and saying that you are. Just by doing the survey, you yourself are now newsworthy. And if we can overcome that sometimes, people will give PR a chance. So many people think that PR is just for well-paid, well-funded, large companies. And while you see them use PR, the people who probably get the biggest jolt from PR and the most coverage are the small businesses. Journalists like to be seen as curators, and they like to profile small discoveries, and so they'd much rather cover a small mom and pop that no one knows about than the large companies within a particular industry, like the Microsofts and Googles of the world.
That's so cool. You've got my mind thinking about, in the particular niche that we like to work in, what trade pubs can we go out to and try to leverage surveys? I think it's a great idea. What about case studies? Are these relevant for, like, you talked a little bit about kind of success stories? Are case stories relevant, or case studies, are they relevant for press releases?
Yeah, I think that they are. I think in the product launch press release, I mentioned using a use case study, but it's basically breaking it down and giving the journalists more of a story arc. So things, if your case study does that and makes something really relevant and provides, maybe it provides numbers, or maybe it provides a unique experience that one of your clients had, those can be incorporated into the press release. Obviously, you often want them to coincide with something else that's happening, like the product launch is a new product, but it doesn't have to be. It could be a relaunch of the product or version 7.8. And here's someone who recently used your product and what their experience was. Incorporate quotes from them talking about their experience and saying really nice things about you. I think that all of those can really help build out that story arc that journalists really need to make an effective article.
So let me ask you this: when creating a press release, what are some of the points or key ingredients, if you will, that really should be included in a press release? And is there anything that should not be included?
Right. So I think that the key ingredients is anything that can help a journalist create a story arc. And a lot of times when people look at press releases, they're looking at what someone else in their industry did in their press release. And that's the worst place to go, because I will tell you, 95% of press releases that get issued, nothing happens to them. There's no earned media. No journalist writes articles about them. They get the syndicated links that happen, but nothing else really happens. So, you can certainly look at another press release and copy it, but then go back to it and say, what would make this more meaningful to share with a journalist? What would make the journalist really want to share this with their users? And I had mentioned the use case study. There are other instances where you can pepper it up with numbers, like get some public data that's out there. And, if you're talking about a particular struggle that some of your clients have, put some numbers behind it. What are the percentages, or, how many people fell in your industry within the first 5 years because of this? That data is probably out there. You do, hunt it down, find it, incorporate it into your press release. An amazing quote, that's a no-brainer. And also just lead from your strength. Have the headline in the opening paragraph really touch on what your newsworthy element is, and you want to make it really useful for a busy journalist just to browse and see that this is relevant to them. I see a lot of people who will create puns and have funny little headlines like they're writing for the New York Post, but you're not writing for the readers of the New York Post. You're writing for busy journalists. And if a busy journalist can't tell from the headline that this is relevant to them, or is this a meaningful hook, they're not going to click through and read the rest of your press release. So again, remember your audience. You're writing for the journalist here, but you're hoping to provide them all the information that will make a compelling article. And other things that you definitely want to include, other than maybe the images or graphics, photos that I'd mentioned, you want to have a good press contact. A lot of people will include a person's email address and phone number. It is something that the newswire requires, that if a journalist is under deadline and they need a clarification before they can go to print, it's important that they be able to reach you. So again, don't send out a press release and then go on vacation. I have had that happen more times than I would like to admit. And then the journalist comes back to me and says, do you know how to get a hold of this person? And we find out a week or two later that they were just on vacation. They hit send on the press release and just left the office. And that is not the thing to do. Journalists are on deadline. And generally, if they can't get clarification on a story in a timely manner, they'll just abandon it and move on.
That's a good point about the contact information. I see this all the time with small businesses. They don't have an email signature. They do not have their contact information. They send out an email and they don't have any contact information. It's like, do you not want people to be able to contact your business? Are you trying to make it difficult? I see it all the time. Sure, you can reply to the email, but what if someone wants to pick up the phone and call you? You have no contact information in your email. It just makes no sense.
And Mickie, just thinking through this, so say there's a small business out there, say I want to do a press release. How costly are these things if someone chooses to move ahead with these? You talked about kind of a bundle, a new customer bundle option. Is that kind of the starting point, or are there other starting points that people could consider?
So on our website, in the footer, we have the new customer special. It's $349 for the average press release to be distributed. You can buy a package at that price, a little bit more savings buying a bundle, but you don't have to do it with your first order. You can do a press release at that price, and within 30 days, if you come back and decide you do want to upgrade into a bundle, you can do that. We do make it really easy for someone to come in and just sort of kick the tires, so to speak, for $349, and then be able to lock in that rate into a bundle. And I do tell people again that a PR campaign is where you should start, not a single press release. And generally 6 to 8 press releases. You can do them in a year. You can do them in 6 months if you can manage to keep them going out. But you really want to spend a little time and energy and do the more strategic types of releases that do work, as opposed to the ones that most people do that work very, very sparingly, which are like the product launch releases that don't have a use case study, the personnel changes of people that aren't really very meaningful in the industry, the press release where you're speaking at a conference, and again, very few people are going to now show up at the conference just to hear you speak, but it looks good. And I think that's why people do those types of releases. They don't know what else to be issuing when it comes to press releases. And so I direct them to my website and that free video masterclass and tell them that here are, as many as 8 different ideas you could do that are meaningful, and you can replicate them again and again. One of my clients that does 30 to 40 releases a year only does surveys and studies. They have a website that has lots of micro verticals. So they might have a page dedicated to software that has to do with accounting. They might have another page that deals with graphic arts and Photoshop type software. So they do press releases around all these little micro verticals, and they're very good at asking relevant questions. And so that's a great way to sort of stand out and replicate it. So they're just using one idea and again, and it continues to work for them. When you build out a PR campaign, you want to make sure that you're testing several things, and then if you find something that works, see if you can tweak it and have it work again.
That's amazing. I mean, it certainly fits with kind of the mindset shift that we try to get our clients into, where instead of thinking of content as a one-off piece, you're thinking of it strategically due to SEO purposes, your strategic goals. And I think the way you're communicating a PR campaign fits very well with that ideology, that you need to think kind of the bigger picture, take a step back, think about your goals of what you're trying to achieve, and create a campaign that is strategic, but it also kind of pushes your business thinking about how do we align better with what our audience wants. And then having this intermediary audience of the journalists is very powerful as well. I think it pushes you to communicate in ways that you might not be used to, but it pressures you into the point of being better at communication.
Absolutely.
So you talked about ereleases.com /plan is the masterclass. Are there other resources or other ways that our listeners could connect with you, or is ereleases.com the best place to kind of start their journey of reaching out?
Right. Yeah. ereleases.com is the best place to start. My staff, which only includes editors, is accessible through email, phone, chat, between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. Eastern time. And we are really good at walking people through the press release process and helping people get their first release. We'll look at your first release at no charge if you just email it to us and give us a couple business days to get back to you with some notes. Again, whether you use us or not, we're just trying to be a resource for other small businesses and entrepreneurs that are out there. And we really believe that press releases are a great way to sort of cut through the noise and sort of claim some ownership of the media out there by getting mentioned and getting all the great things that come along with being in PR. And like I said, that free masterclass is a great way to start. But we also have ebooks on the website and other resources like press release samples and examples and things like that. So just feel free to go there and look around. And all of our social media is on the lower right, and it goes directly to my LinkedIn. So that's a great place to reach out to me. It's probably one of the few social medias that I actually use. I have people who are in charge of the rest, but I do look forward to people trying PR and making it work for them.
Fantastic. Well, I think this is a great place to wrap up. Thank you, Mickie, for joining Paul and I and sharing your thoughts on this really vital topic of press releases for small businesses. And thank you to our audience for joining us today. I hope you found this topic really valuable. We're always open to hearing your ideas. So if there's a topic about small business marketing that you as a listener, you want answers to, pop us a message and we're happy to do a topical podcast about that. Please share this with your friends, family, kids, dogs, cats, colleagues, and so that they can benefit from it as well. And until next week, keep calm and market on, folks.